Well, good morning, good afternoon. I'm Nancie Kroeber, and it is my birthday today.
Oh.
At this point, I'm just glad to have another one. I'm going to be talking about some real brief things to set up for Rich's action. First thing I want to state, I was just reading another report, and it seems like the more reports I read, the more the worse the numbers get. We are now at the point between foreclosures in process and foreclosures that have gone by. We're at about 16 million. Wow. And we're not even halfway there according to their projections. So how many people are going to be left owning homes when we get done with the harvesting of American homes? And what I'm going to talk a little bit about is why these are going on. What Wall Street did was created a housing bubble where they inflated the values of our homes and hyped people that you better hurry up and buy now or you won't get one, and created designer loans that nobody understood, or very few people understood, that siphoned trillions and trillions of dollars out of our economy, and then they collapsed. And they made a fortune on the way up, and they're making a quadruple fortune on the way down. And so I'm going to just go over a few facts on how they did that and why we need to stop foreclosures and why that's needed to stabilize our economy, and how this all plays into move your money. But the first couple questions I'm going to just go over a couple of things and ask questions about who loses every time. Who loses every time a foreclosure happens? First off, we have the investors. The investors were pension plans from all over the world, but certainly America. And if any of us in the room has a pension plan, just go like this, or an IRA, the money is in, okay, you guys all lost. Who loses? That's us. That's the 99%. We lost. Because that's where the money came from to fund these houses. And when these players on Wall Street, these faceless players on Wall Street, went to these pension plans to pull the money out to fund the loans of all of our homes, they didn't take the face amount out. They took sometimes 3 and 4 times the face amount. And I won't go into all the math here today, but for example, the McCoy ruling we got, according to their own formulas, his $320,000 loan, it appears they took out close to $1 million to fund that loan from our pension plans. So we have the start of a Ponzi right here when they funded these loans. And then they took some of that money, they funded the loan, they put about $680,000 in their pocket. They put some of the money into reserves to make the payments on the McCoy loan because they knew that Don would not be able to make his loan because it was a designer loan that was going to escalate. And that's called a Ponzi, when you use the investors' money to make their own payments. Then they took some of the money and they bought bets, which they called credit default swaps, that Don wouldn't make his payment. And according to their own formulas, they could have easily bet at least 30 times the face amount. So if you go 30 times 320, you're close to $10 million. So on the front end, you had a $1 million Ponzi, and on the back end, you had a $10 million casino on Don's little $320,000 loan. And they did that millions of times over, all over America. And that's the formula they used. So they siphoned the minute they funded the loan, and if they can get this thing in foreclosure, they siphon again. And that money leaves our communities, it leaves our streets, it leaves our pension plans, it leaves our community investments, and it leaves the country. And we don't have anything left to loan our small businesses. So when we look at who lost in this orchestrated financial nightmare that none of us understood, how many of you knew that that was going on? Some of you knew, but did you know it was going on 5-6 years ago when it was being created? To the details that I just gave.
Not to the details.
Not to the details. We all knew, a lot of us knew there was something nefarious about it, but we didn't know how bad. So, investors lost, that was us. Homeowners, did they lose?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. both the homeowners that got foreclosed on and are being foreclosed on, how about the homeowners that are still in the house where the market value in their house is plummeting? Are they losing?
Yes.
How about renters? What's happening to renters in this? Number one, rents are going up because right now there's 5.5 million pieces of what they call shadow inventory that are off the market that got foreclosed on, that Wall Street players are sitting on and don't want to put it on the market.
And are not renting.
And are not renting. So what happens to the price of rent for the renters? It goes up. Also, we get calls from renters crying. I had one woman, she was sobbing. It was the third time she was being evicted, and she'd never missed a rent payment. They were all foreclosures. This is going on all over America. Single mom with 3 kids, and she said, I can't move my children again. Okay? And so, who loses? The renters lose. How about the taxpayers? Who's paying for this? We are. That's us, the 99% again. So you look at who's hurting and paying and losing. The 99% over and over and over. Small and micro businesses. Last year, Bank of America did 6 new small business loans in the state of Oregon. Yeah.
6.
The money is not coming back into Oregon. This is why we need a state bank. This is why we need to divest these funds out of these corporate, corrupt creatures that are running the world right now, running our politics, running our elected officials. And who was the most predatorized? We all were. It didn't matter who we were. They went after all of us. But I can say people of color, people with disabilities, people with language impairments were gone after much more. And those are the silent people in our communities. And we don't see them here necessarily today in much of a turnout. And we need to continue to stand up for them and invite them to the table and educate them to push this and let them know they're supported and we're here for them. We lost tax revenues that came. What's happening with our taxes at the state level? Not even federal level, but state level. They keep dropping and dropping because of unemployment. Unemployment right now is stated, what's it, about 11.5 in our county? Do you know, Rich? Yeah.
We're, I think, 10 something.
10.
State
Okay.
revenues dropping.
State revenues are dropping. Everything's dropping. They're saying 10, but here's what we're finding when we do actual research. People that are unemployed, underemployed, never could get counted on the rolls are closer to 3 times that. Food stamps across the nation, 1 in 5 houses. In Jackson County, 9 months ago was there. I believe it's higher now. So these rural communities are really closer to 30% unemployment, and about 1/4 of our homes are on food stamps. We have a spiral to the bottom going on. And yet it feels like we're very, there's no power. We have power, and so that's what Rich is going to pull it back together on how to get that power back. Communities all over, every county in the nation lost money because of what, and I won't go into the details on how this was, but an entity called MERS. They created their own recording system so that these recordings are not done at the county anymore, so we can't tell who owns the loans, if anyone owns the loans. I can say we've been in our house 3 years now without a payment, 20 years altogether, 17 years of payments, 3 years without a payment, and we cannot find who owns the loan, and our research shows nobody owns our loan. And that's why we're not in foreclosure, because they can't figure out what to do because they know we have the goods. So,
Bundle the financial instruments and just put away somewhere.
It was so broken, the financial instruments never got our note and deed. It never went anywhere. It's dubious whether or not it even exists, that they were probably shredded. So, but here's what the counties lost. Jackson County for the last 10 years has been losing about $1 million a year in lost revenues because of this nefarious, unbridled greed of this entity called MERS that created our broken chain of titles that we'll be dealing with for hundreds of years in America. And we're losing still about $1 million a year. And I know $1 million isn't huge in the overall budget of Jackson Jackson County, but do you think if they got told they got a grant for an extra $1 million this year, they'd take it?
Nancy, that's because it wasn't recorded, right?
Right,
Right.
and so we're
And
working,
county fees.
we're working with county clerks all over the state. They're up in arms. The more we get them educated, and that's one of our missions for 2012, and going after this money, and going after education on it, and going after having the banks, the title clerks refusing to allow these fictitious foreclosures filed in our state, in our counties.
Nancy, who pays the taxes on the homes that are foreclosed that the banks own, or
The banks do.
they do pay the taxes?
They do. In our state, because of the way state laws are in Oregon, and each state has their own laws, the banks have to pay them or they lose them immediately to the county. And where are they getting the money to pay that?
From us?
From us.
Well, what about your home? If you don't know who owns it,
They're
Who pays
paying
the
it.
taxes?
They're paying the taxes on it right now. They pay it before we can get to
how
the
can
county.
they pay if you don't even know who they are?
How can they do anything
But-
they have done? You
Well, if
know?
the county gets a service on them, I'm sure they
The
know.
county gets the money, they're happy, and it just drifts on. It could drift on for years like this with us. We're planning on suing them this spring and bringing them to the table because they won't work with us. So there's the problem. This is the problem in the nutshell that we've gone over. Who loses? Who gains? That's a really easy answer. Who do you think gains?
Upper
Banks.
1%.
1%
Right.
gain, and the money's leaving. And so, we can all day long be mad at them, but what's really important is that we figure out where we can get those leverage positions. And about 2.5 years ago, we moved our money and we started asking all our members. We have over 1,000 families throughout the state and rapidly growing, and lots of coalition relationships between groups. And we have gotten thousands of accounts moved just because of Good Grief America, and now we have that tipping point where lots of groups are moving in. And so now we're to the next stage of divesting the city and the county's money. And we have power, and it's called the power of the purse. Where do we have our money? Because they're highly leveraged. These Wall Street banks have got, their accounting systems are very much like Enron. Okay? They're very vulnerable. Bank of America, to all the research, and we have a huge research tank that we research things constantly on these banks, at Good Grief America, show that Bank of America is insolvent. And it's their Enron accounting that keeps them going, and the more money we can divest from them, the more vulnerable they become. And I would love to see the FDIC take them over and break them up and get our small local banks and our state banks functioning to rebuild our communities. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rich, and we can move into what you want to talk about and how to do the action.